guys, welcome back to Of Stone and Clay. This is episode 85. Today we're doing a solo pod. I'm just going to be answering some questions that the listeners asked. And though, I want to start with this little story. So I just got back from Yosemite National Park. I'd never been there before. And I had something crazy happen to me. And it wasn't even the 16-mile hike that I did without any preparation off 2 hours of sleep. It wasn't about that. The day after I played in a spike ball tournament in Boise. What happened was, I'm not going to get into all the details, but I land in Sacramento and I need to drive 3.5, 4 hours to Yosemite, meet up with my buddies in an Airbnb. And long story short, there's a little bit of a snafu at the car rental place. I got to essentially take an Uber almost 4 hours. Super expensive, super inconvenient. Turns out nobody wants to do that. And so this guy accepts my ride, and then 2 minutes later he's like, whoa, I'm not taking you to Yosemite. Are you crazy? I was like, I thought you were crazy for accepting it. Anyways, he calls a buddy that is down to do it for cash. So we go on this journey together. We end up getting there like 4:30 in the morning. But this dude, Abdul, from Afghanistan, ended up being the coolest guy. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, we started chatting, and I was planning on just sleeping in the back of the car. I was actually kind of stoked to not have to rent a car and drive 4 hours after being exhausted. So I was just going to crash in the back. And then I started talking to Abdul. And turns out he's ex-military, used to work with the U.S. forces fighting the Taliban. And I'm like, Abdul, I'm sitting in the front seat now, and we're talking the whole trip. So I talked to Abdul, and it was just such a cool experience chatting with him and hearing his perspectives on things. And, I asked him, kind of expecting a trivial response, but I asked him about, what's been your favorite part about America? Thinking maybe the food or, something about the culture or whatever. And he just goes, oh, freedom, brother, freedom. He's like, in Afghanistan, no freedom, but here, so much freedom. And such a simple answer, but almost got me emotional because it just reminded me how good we have it here, man. How good we have it. And to be grateful for that. And he said, because he helped the U.S. forces, the U.S. government helped him and his family come over here, which is not easy to do. But he said, when me and my wife and 2 kids came over, we had only like 20,000 rupees. And I said, oh, well, how much, in U.S. dollars? And he goes, $15. And listen, the dude is driving Uber all day. He's in school. And I was so frustrated with the situation I was in, like literally was trying to figure out my ride for like an hour and a half. Finally figured it out. I'm going to get like no sleep before I hike 16 miles. But I actually ended up being really grateful that I met Abdul, and really grateful that I could kind of help him out a little bit. Like, he was, I don't know that he was stoked to drive that far and then drive back, but he told me he needed the money, and that it was that he was grateful for it. And so, sometimes you're so caught up in your own like really trivial stresses and problems, and then you realize, hey, maybe this is a little gift, and maybe it's not even for me. Maybe the gift is for someone else. So really cool experience. Shout out to Abdul. And yeah, we stopped after an hour of driving and had a smoking break. It was mostly him, but and he bought me a Red Bull. He didn't have to do that. Okay, we're going to go through some questions today. a lot of these questions are really good, and honestly, I haven't sat down and thought about my answers. I want to kind of answer off the cuff. Um, some of these questions are pretty similar, if not the same, to questions I may have answered in the past. But what I love is I think our answers change to things over time. And maybe not even drastically, but sometimes even day to day, our answers change a little bit. Um, that's why I don't love personality tests sometimes, because I feel like people will pigeonhole themselves and say, oh, this is how I am. This is just the way I am. And for some things that's true, maybe, but I like the idea of being fluid with my thoughts and my beliefs and my opinions. And, some are more concrete and don't really change that much, but your perspectives change. So let's see what we got. The first one is, what's the most dangerous thing you've ever done / nearest to death, near death experience? Let's see. I've talked about this before, but I had a pretty gnarly experience going back to Brazil, where I served my LDS mission. I went back years and years and years later and just went with a couple buddies, and we ended up going up into these slums. They call them favelas out there, and basically unknowingly walked into sort of a drug den. But out in the open, there's this big table full of drugs and cash, and we're up there to just take kind of some touristy pictures, because it's up on this hill. It's a cool view. There's these cool like painted houses. Anyway, we're up there minding our business, starting to feel a little sinister, a little weird, as it sometimes does when you're just in a bad spot where bad things are happening. Can't really explain it, but this guy just says, in Portuguese, he goes, "Are you guys looking for somebody?" And I'm like, I turn around and I see he's got an AR strapped to his chest. And I'm like, oh, shoot. And I just tell him, oh, sorry, we're just here to take some pictures or whatever. And he looks over at the table and he's like, "You can't take pictures here, brother. You cannot take pictures here." And then he seized our phones. He took our phones and basically wanted to make sure that whatever pictures we took were erased. And so, luckily, I had kept up on my Portuguese, and ultimately, once they found out what we were doing, that we weren't journalists or we weren't narcs or whatever, like, it was fine. He even offered to take us up the hill a little further, kind of escort us. And the problem is, one of my buddies spoke Portuguese and the other didn't, and I could see he was terrified because he had no idea what was going on. And we were both probably a little shook, but so I don't know how dangerous that ultimately was, but in the moment it felt pretty dangerous and possibly near death. Haven't really had anything too crazy though. I've been in some car accidents where the car was pretty mangled, but never seriously injured. Never really had any serious injuries. I've never even broken a bone. So honestly, really been blessed there. But the sub question here, did you notice anything different about yourself after? I don't think so, but I think it's hard to notice those things. I think every little thing you go through changes you a little bit, and sometimes a lot of bit. But I don't know. I guess for me, it wasn't scary enough for it to give me PTSD or make me value life anymore. Maybe if it had happened when I was younger, but I feel like when it happened, I already valued life really greatly for a lot of reasons. But next question: how do you know when you're pursuing God's will for your life? That's tough. I think maybe you don't. Maybe you don't know. I think the goal, if you're somebody who wants to follow God and want to pursue His will, I think the goal is to just move in that direction and try to communicate with God enough and be close to God enough that it feels like you're moving in that right direction. But I think God allows us to make, missteps, and he allows us to, go down a path for a while that's ultimately not the path we end up on and not the path we even should be on. Not that he guides us down that or lures us down that, but he lets us, And so, knowing if you're pursuing God's will, I think it's such a personal quest. It's such a personal thing with you and your maker. And I think sometimes you wrestle with it. You wrestle with God and you wrestle with your belief system and your testimony, and that's okay. But I just think that's a constant evolution, a constant battle, a constant wrestle, and just like a lot of things, like if you were to ask, like, how do you know if you're happy? It's like, well, there's plenty of indicators and clues, but happiness is complex and nuanced, and there's going to be lots of moments where you're kind of happy or you feel happy. Same with pursuing God's will. There are going to be moments where maybe you feel like you are, or it seems like you are, and then moments when you definitely know that you are. At times when you're in doubt, like, I think some of these questions are a little bit more nuanced than we realize. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to how do you know you're pursuing God's will. You can ask him, Next question. In what ways are you becoming the type of person you hope to find in a partner? And that's a really good question. And I've often wondered, as I pray to meet the person that I want to be with, to meet the love of my life, to meet the future mother of my children, all these things, I'm praying for a type of person, a type of love, right? I often wonder, am I being the type of person that type of person is praying for themselves, if that makes sense? If a girl out there is praying, I want a guy that is motivated and he's honest and he is this, and this, it's like, okay, am I being that guy for her? Because if not, I'm probably, she probably deserves something better. And so I guess the specific question, what ways are you becoming the type of person you hope to find in a partner? I guess the truth is, I don't know exactly what a girl is looking for, but I know the person I want to be with is somebody who constantly wants to evolve as a human and wants to improve and ameliorate their situation and their mental health and their communication ability and their relationships. And, they want their friendships to grow. They want their mind to grow. They want their spirit to grow. They want their soul to expand, all these things. And so it's not necessarily a specific checklist. It's more me trying to just be the best version of myself. And the tough part is, I think everybody knows how they could improve their life if they really sat down and, had themselves a nice personal inventory of things they could do better or things they want to add into their life. But sometimes that's a tough conversation with yourself. So I try to be open with myself and kind of have these tough conversations with myself, so I can self-improve. Favorite book of the Bible? That's tough. I've read the Bible cover to cover, actually. It's been a while since I've done that. I've read the New Testament way more than the Old Testament for sure. But I don't think I have one that sticks out. I um I think I enjoy Paul's prose more than anything, but I think I enjoy the story of the Gospels more. Um, so yeah, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they all, you know, have certain things that hit, and then the Pauline epistles, some of that language maybe speaks to me a little bit more. But yeah, I don't have an outright favorite. Next place on your travel bucket list. It's a good question. I've traveled a decent amount, you know. I've been to 21 countries, 49 states. So I definitely need to get to Alaska. That's on my list. As far as countries go, there's so many I want to go to. I just kind of want to go um, to the next one that is affordable and makes sense, and friends want to go. I kind of a long time ago decided that the bucket list wasn't for me, but rather I just have sort of these perpetual lists that I want to add to as much as possible, you know? And maybe when I get older and I'm running out of time, I'll be like, okay, maybe I only have a handful of more countries to visit. And so let's narrow it down. But at this stage of my life, I'm like, my bucket list would be too long, I think is the point. And I don't want to feel like, I don't want to be bummed because certain things never get checked off, because I would just be adding like every single day. And so I try to live my life in a way that I don't need a bucket list, but I just am doing things that I enjoy and things that bring me peace and things that enrich my life as much as possible. And as your life changes, as you get married, as your family grows, as your career expands, whatever, like new opportunities come, and maybe other opportunities vanish. But yeah, the bucket list specifically was never for me. I just want to, as far as countries, I want to go to as many countries as I can before I die. Um, and maybe I'll get to a point when I'm older where the quantity doesn't matter as much anymore, and I want to go back to favorites, or I want to, you know, see a few that I never got around to. I don't know. But for now, I've been to 21 countries, got a lot more left. For sure want to go to Turkey, want to go to Iceland, want to go to Serbia, Romania, Hungary. Yeah, the list goes on and on and on. But I got to get to Alaska ASAP. Okay, next question. What would you do differently at the age of 26? That's a tough question in a very specific age. I think here's why, and I realize I'm not good at just answering questions with a simple, concise answer, but I think that question is tough for me because if I could go back to any age, any time in my life and do something different, I would probably do so many things different because I made so many mistakes. And but so it's like, do you just pick one thing, the thing that had the most negative repercussions, or do you keep it kind of vague and say, I would be kinder, or I would be less hard on myself? I actually really like those, though. I think if I could go back and be 26 again, and I think this would be maybe the same answer for a lot of ages, I would go back and I would be kinder to people, and I would be kinder to myself and more patient with myself. I think at 26, I had an idea that life needed to be a certain way in my mid 20s or my late 20s or before I'm 30 or whatever. And I just wish I wasn't so hard on myself, man. I was doing my best, and man, I messed up a lot and didn't get a lot of the things I wanted, but I also really loved a lot and really tried and really did some cool things with my life. And so, and maybe this is a good reminder to, you know, infuse this philosophy into my life at any stage, that kindness to others and to yourself is like, I don't know, it's invaluable. Okay, next question is best meal I've ever had. This is tough. I wouldn't call myself a connoisseur, but I love food, and if you know me personally, you know that I'm a man of many, many lists. I have written down every movie I've ever seen, every book I've ever read, every city I've ever been to. And so I have a notebook that has every restaurant I've ever been to. And I think I'm currently at 956 unique restaurants. I just love to try new places and try new things. And so the best meal I've ever had, oh man, I ate at this steakhouse like a year and a half ago, called Christopher Sonoma's Steakhouse in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I got like, I took a girl, I'd helped somebody out, and this guy was like, hey, I want to like pay for you and a date to go to a really nice dinner. And so I was like, okay. So I normally don't splurge this much on a nice dinner, even though I love going out. So I go to this nice steakhouse, and I get this 16-ounce ribeye, and we get some, I think, braised asparagus with lemon sauce and béarnaise, and I don't even know, but it was the best meal I've ever had. And maybe I've eaten pizza in Italy, and I've been to churrascarias in Brazil, and I've had some amazing food, but this was just so good. It really was. And I'm a big steak guy, and the steak was amazing. And I've had Ruth's Chris, and Ruth's Chris is up there as well. But this, even all the sides, we ordered a bunch of sides to share, and just I couldn't believe, like, it was for sure the best asparagus I've ever had by a margin of 10. Like, it was insane. And like the sauteed mushrooms, the fancy whatever kind of potatoes we had, like it was some garlic fries, everything was just top shelf. I think if I was extremely wealthy, food would kind of be my thing. Like I don't think I would own like 10 cars. Even if I was a billionaire, I don't think I'd have 10 cars. I think I'd have 2 or 3. But I think I would eat at a really nice restaurant like almost every night, and for sure have a private chef. But gosh, now I'm getting really hungry, and it's almost midnight. Next question. What do you think are some of the most beautiful things in this world or in this life? I think this is a really important question, and not because whatever your answer should be is important, but I think trying to find beauty and trying to seek beauty and trying to see it as much as possible is really important. So for me, it's a lot of things. I'm obsessed with sunsets. I think sunsets are such a gift we're given, partly because they're so unique. Like I love mountains. Mountains are beautiful, when they're snow capped, and when the sun is descending and The shadows are just right, and there's an alpine glow. Like, there's some beautiful things about nature, but, the mountains are, besides, they change a little bit seasonally, but mostly they're the same. They're beautiful every day, but the sunsets are different every single day. And the sunsets add to the beauty of the mountains, and they add to the beauty of the beach and the ocean, and they add to the beauty of an otherwise mundane day. Sometimes a sunset is literally the best thing that happened to me in a 24-hour period. You know, um, you can always, every single day, it might be overcast or whatever, and you don't have much of a sunset, but almost every day you can count on some beautiful clouds that you've never seen in that formation before. You can count on rays of light, you know, refracting and moving in ways you've never seen before. And so, yeah, I find so much beauty in a sunset. What are some other beautiful things in this world? People. Um, that's another thing that's, people are so unique. It's crazy to me that besides twins, like everyone that's ever lived on this planet, which I think scientists say is around 100 billion people, they've all looked different. That's crazy. That's crazy. And even, people talk about, oh, so and so's my doppelganger. It's like, yeah, but they ultimately have a lot of differences still physically. And it's just crazy. So people are beautiful. I could answer that question all night. What's beautiful in this life? Books, candles, love, a mother, photography, watercolors, penguins, water falling off of something, trickling down. Yeah, I could just talk about it all day long. But I think what's important is not what's beautiful, but what's important is, are you looking for what's beautiful? Because if you're not, you'll miss it. You won't find it. But if you open your eyes and look for it, it's everywhere. The same person asked, what do you feel are the most beautiful things about yourself? Now, this is a good one, because this is a question I often ask my guests on the podcast. I'll often say, what do you like, or what do you love the most about yourself? But I like, what do you feel are the most beautiful things about yourself? Let's see, let's get this right. The most beautiful things about myself. I think it's beautiful how much I love people. I think it's beautiful how easily I can feel joy, even though I have a propensity to feel sad. I think it's beautiful how much I care about certain details, and that varies from subject to subject, but there are certain things that I just want every single detail, and I want to know everything, and I want to write everything down, and I want to capture it and save it and document it forever. And I think that's beautiful. I think my voice is beautiful. I think my eyes are beautiful. We better stop there. If I could have a conversation with any historical figure or fictional character, who would it be? Now, when I read this, my very first thought is like, well, this is kind of like a cheating answer, but it's got to be Jesus, right? But I'm not going to include that because it says if I could have a conversation with, and I do have a conversation with Jesus every day. So not counting it. A historical figure. I would love to chat with Alexander the Great. I've read a lot about him. Um, interesting figure. For somebody to captivate people so easily and to lead people and to conquer people. Yeah, it would just be interesting, you know. A lot of these historical figures I'd want to talk to kind of set the record straight, see how they really are, and see the personality behind the history. I'd love to chat with Abraham Lincoln. I would love to chat with Christopher Columbus, all the classics. I'll tell you what would be really interesting is talking with like my great grandfather, to see, does he feel like he's related to me? Does he feel like a church? Does he feel like, can I feel that connection in the lineage? That would be really interesting. A fictional character. This is not something I think about a lot. This is like the question, what's your spirit animal? It's not something I think about. Don't have a spirit animal. So, a conversation with a fictional character. I gotta go to like my favorite books or movies. Let's see, maybe. I don't know. This is a hard question. I really like. I'm just gonna say some obscure character that no one's ever heard of, but yeah, let's see my. You know what? One of my favorite films ever is called Life Itself, and I want to talk to like 3 or 4 of the characters in that movie because they have such an interesting character arc that spans generations, and I would just love to know what they're feeling. But that's a hard question, darn it. I don't think I answered it very well. Just a few more questions. What are ways you process through feelings? Man, do I process through feelings? I think there's a lot of things I do, and I don't know how helpful they are. Sometimes feelings linger with me a really long time, and I wish they would hurry up and work themselves out. But I also believe in not running away from my feelings and embracing them and letting them in and just really feeling them. But yeah, to process feelings, I would say for me, I actually had somebody ask me today. Somebody sent me a message and wanted to know how to get through a breakup, and I was like, honestly, I hate to throw cliches at anyone, but the biggest element in processing those feelings and getting over a breakup or moving on, I think, is time. That doesn't help when you're going through it because you're like, okay, but what about now? How do I get through it now? How do I process my feelings now? But I think until time kind of does its work, I think the best thing you can do is just infuse good into your life and seek joy and seek beauty. It goes back to these things, how much beautiful can I find? How much joy can I find? And, those things are going to just make your days better, and they're not going to they're not going to erase the pain, and they're not going to change sad facts, but they're just going to make your days better. And I think that's all you can do, whether you're dealing with a breakup or mourning the death of a loved one, or, going through your own dark personal depression. Like, processing feelings is really hard and can be a lifelong crucible. But I think in the meantime, maybe you need therapy, maybe you need to be outside more often, maybe you need to exercise more, maybe you need to eat better and sleep better, and maybe you need to read or journal more. There's a million things, but in the meantime, I'll tell you what won't hurt in your journey of processing your feelings and getting past negative emotion is adding positive emotion and being kind to people and helping people and loving people. Like, that will not make your journey harder. It will not make your process of healing more difficult. I really, really think it would be near impossible for it to not help a little bit. But if, in my opinion, there's no chance it makes it worse. So if there's no chance it makes it worse, it's at least an experiment worth attempting, I think. But it's hard, how to process your feelings. Some feelings are so strong, like, I'm almost like, I don't know what to tell you. Stay busy with things that bring you joy, and let the joy kind of nudge out the negative emotions, the sadness, the depression, the despondency. What does being content mean to you right now? That's a really good question. I think for me, I like to get to a point where I'm content with not being content. And maybe that sounds kind of like this riddle of a tautology, but I think when you can get to a point where you don't need X, Y, or Z to happen to be content, then you're actually content. You find joy, you find meaning, you find purpose in everything you do, and not just your relationships, or not just your career, not just your religion, not just your passions and hobbies, but you find purpose and fulfillment and contentment in everything you do. And so for me, a lot of that has to do with, how do I feel when I'm essentially bored or have nothing specific to do? How content can I feel at an airport if my flight gets delayed 2 hours? How content can I feel if there's a huge delay in something and I have to sit around for 2 hours and have nothing to do? And so for me, I almost like those moments when, like, my plane gets delayed, because then I'm in a position where I'm forced to be content. I'm forced to find joy in this next 2 or 3 hours, because my alternative is horrible. My alternative is complain, bemoan the situation, go vent to somebody, go complain to somebody, pity myself, And so to me, it's an opportunity to say, I can actually do whatever I want with this time. I can be as content as I want to be. I can say, okay, I have no power over what just happened, but now I'm in an airport with 3 hours to kill. I can do whatever. I can take a nap. I can catch up on text. I can read a book. I can go get some food. I can relax, but I think so many people struggle to relax because they're so worried about getting things done and being efficient. And checking off their to-do list and their Google Calendar, but I think you have to strive to be content in every situation, because most situations there's a decent percent chance that something bad's going to happen. So I almost like to prepare myself for that. Okay, this question I really like. Is there a quote that resonates with you the most at this moment? And this quote I'm going to read, it goes back to maybe a small theme of this episode. It's by Jack Kerouac, who is one of my favorite writers of all time. He's probably top 3, top 5 favorite fiction writers, and he's written a lot of novels and novellas and poetry, and he's written some nonfiction too. But he said, "Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will realize you're already in heaven now." Come on, like, how simple is that? We're all looking for a parcel of heaven, right? We're all looking for ways to be happier and for ways to process our feelings and feel joy more fully, to feel heaven, to be in heaven, But if we practice kindness all day to everybody, I love that, you'll realize you're already in heaven now. So maybe maybe you're looking for a way out of hell, and the truth is that heaven is all around you. You've just decided that where you are is hell. And that's not to mitigate some hellish scenarios that some people are in, but I just love that idea, man. Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will realize you're already in heaven now. Wow. Yeah, I think kindness is something that we take for granted and that we forget about because, yeah, our whole lives are revolving around ourselves. But like I said, if we're also practicing kindness to ourselves, I think it'll naturally flow out to other people, and then you'll realize that your life is pretty heavenly if you can do that. And I think if you look around at the people that are truly happiest in your life, and everyone goes through stuff, and no one's always happy, but the people around you that sort of emanate joy and sort of have this glow, this luminescence about them that feels effortless. Look at the way they interact with people. They tend to be the kind people, the people that want to serve and want to help and want to be there for people that are crying and struggling. I think it's the easiest secret to happiness, which is what we're all looking for all the time. And it's almost annoying because it's so simple. People will write whole books about how to be happy, and people will go to seminars and pay thousands of dollars, and they'll do therapy, and they'll try everything under the sun to try to capture happiness and find it in a bottle. But I think if you're just a little kinder to yourself and to everybody all day, I think the byproduct is happiness. So I appreciate you guys for these questions. They're really good for me to ponder on. I don't think my answers are necessarily correct or better than anyone else's, but I think the questions are important. Like going back to this question I love so much, what do you think are some of the most beautiful things in this world or this life? I don't think the answer is very important. I think the question is important, um, to try and find things that are the most beautiful in this life. That's what's important, you know. Um, yeah, so I appreciate it. For everybody that listens to the pod regularly, that means a lot to me. I'm starting to get a lot of people reaching out and sending me messages telling me what episodes they liked or what resonated with them. And I'll say to you that absolutely means the world to me. And I will never get tired of it. And I will never, ever stop trying to respond to all of those because it means so much to me because I want to do this until the old aortic pump gives up. So I love you guys and appreciate it. This was episode 85. Give it a share. Give us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. And I love you.